Prepare for a revelation that will challenge everything you've ever heard about the origins of humanity. Science claims we come from gradual evolutionary processes, but Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, offered a much deeper and more disturbing insight. The first souls incarnated on Earth 12.5 million years ago, assuming primate-like bodies. What seemed like mere spiritual theory connects with secrets buried in time, mysteries of forgotten civilizations, and a truth that could change your perception of life forever. Edgar Cayce revolutionized our understanding of human origins by asserting that the process began not with physical evolution, but with a spiritual decision. According to his psychic readings, souls existed in higher dimensions before choosing to experience earthly life. This choice was not a cosmic accident, but a conscious decision by advanced spiritual entities who wished to explore new forms of expression and growth. Earth was seen as a spiritual laboratory where souls could develop unique aspects of their divine nature. Cayce's concept differs radically from the materialist view because it places consciousness as a primary, not secondary element. For him, it was not matter that created consciousness, but consciousness that shaped matter to its evolutionary needs. The first souls were beings of pure light that gradually densified to inhabit increasingly complex physical forms. This process was not a moral fall, but a courageous exploration of new territories of existence. Incarnation represented a cosmic school where the soul could learn through direct experience. Cayce's revelations suggest that each soul carries within itself the memory of these divine origins, even when forgotten by the conscious mind. This memory manifests as an inexplicable nostalgia for the sacred and a constant search for meaning that transcends the material. Human beings feel incomplete because, in essence, they are spiritual beings temporarily limited by a physical body. The earthly journey is, therefore, an adventure of self-discovery, where each life represents an opportunity to remember our true nature. Cayce's work indicates that this spiritual view of human origins does not invalidate science, but complements it by providing the missing dimension. While science explains how bodies evolved, Cayce reveals why souls chose this process. Physical evolution then becomes an intelligent vehicle created by higher consciousness to enable increasingly rich and complex experiences. Each evolutionary advancement represented a new capacity for the soul to express itself through matter. This perspective completely transforms our relationship with existence, as it reveals that we are active protagonists of our own evolution, not passive products of blind forces. Every challenge, every growth, every awakening is part of a greater plan that our soul traced even before birth. Human life thus gains a transcendent purpose that goes far beyond mere physical survival. Ultimately, Cayce's vision offers hope and dignity to human beings by revealing that we carry within us the original divine spark. We are not cosmic accidents, but conscious expressions of the sacred exploring the infinite possibilities of creation. This truth, when deeply understood, has the power to transform not only our worldview, but our very experience of being alive. Edgar Cayce's proposed 12.5 million year date range places the beginning of the human experience in a period conventional science associates with the dawn of hominids. Cayce arrived at this date not through archaeological or geological studies, but through psychic readings where he accessed the Akashic records, a kind of cosmic library containing the entire history of existence. According to his visions, this period marks not the beginning of life on Earth, but the moment when the first souls decided to experiment with dense physical forms. It was a time when the Earth was still undergoing significant geological transformations and offered unique conditions for this spiritual experimentation. During this distant period, the planet had very different characteristics than it does today, with distinctly shaped continents and climates that fostered extraordinary biodiversity. Cayce's readings describe a younger, more vibrant Earth, where spiritual energies were still more tangible and accessible to emerging life forms. The first souls who chose to incarnate encountered a world in constant change, offering infinite possibilities for experience. This dynamic environment was perfect for spiritual beings seeking to grow through adaptation and overcoming challenges. The choice of this specific moment was not accidental, but rather strategic from a spiritual perspective. The souls knew they needed a sufficiently long period to gradually develop their capacity to inhabit increasingly complex physical forms. The 12.5 million years represented a cosmic timeline that would allow for multiple experiments, adjustments, and refinements in the incarnation process. Each geological era would offer new opportunities for learning and evolution, creating a spiritual curriculum that would span eons. Cayce's revelations suggest that during these initial millions of years, souls went through various stages of adaptation to physical experience. First, they learned to manipulate dense energy, then to form temporary bodies, and finally to settle into more permanent forms. This process was neither linear nor uniform. Some souls adapted quickly, while others needed more time to master the challenges of material existence. The 12.5 million year period allowed each soul to find its own pace of development. During these primordial eras, communication between the spiritual and physical worlds was much more fluid than it is today. Souls maintained a conscious connection with their divine origins even while incarnated, creating a civilization that naturally integrated material and spiritual aspects. This harmonious integration was reflected in a respectful relationship with nature and the development of abilities that today we would consider supernatural, but which were simply natural for beings who had not completely lost their spiritual memory. The forgotten 12.5 million years of time also represents an invitation to expand our temporal perspective on human existence. If our journey truly began so far in the past, it means that each present life is but a small fragment of a much larger and richer experience. This understanding can bring both humility and greatness. Humility in recognizing that we are still learning, and greatness in realizing the immensity of our spiritual journey through time. The connection between the first souls and primate bodies represents one of the most fascinating aspects of Edgar Cayce's revelations. According to his psychic readings, the souls did not create human bodies out of thin air, but chose to work with life forms already existing on Earth, gradually perfecting them to serve as suitable vehicles for spiritual experience. Primates offered a promising biological structure, with a developed nervous system, rudimentary communication capabilities, and manual skills that could be refined. The souls saw in these creatures the perfect potential for their physical expression. The process of inhabiting primate bodies was not a forced possession, but an evolutionary collaboration between spiritual consciousness and biological life. Souls brought superior intelligence, creativity, and the ability to plan for the future, while primates offered survival instincts, physical adaptability, and a natural connection with the earthly environment. This fusion created a unique synergy that allowed the development of capabilities neither element possessed alone. The soul learned to navigate the physical world, while the primate body became more sophisticated through the influence of higher consciousness. During the first millions of years of this collaboration, the transformations were gradual but constant. Souls began to influence the primate's brain structure, developing areas related to language, abstract thought, and artistic creativity. Simultaneously, bodies adapted to spiritual needs, developing greater longevity, a more defined upright posture, and more skilled hands for creating tools and expressing ideas through art. Each generation represented a small step toward a more perfect integration of spirit and matter. Cayce's readings indicate that different soul groups chose to work with different primate species in various parts of the world. This would explain the diversity of physical and cultural characteristics that emerged in different regions of the Earth. Some souls focused on developing brain capacity, others on physical strength, and still others on spiritual sensitivity. This strategic diversification created a rich tapestry of human expressions that enriched the overall evolutionary process. The transition from primate bodies to proto-human forms did not occur uniformly across the planet. Certain regions, especially those that would later become Atlantis and Lemuria, saw more accelerated development due to the concentration of more advanced souls. In these areas, the fusion of soul and primate body produced beings with extraordinary capabilities, including rudimentary telepathy, increased longevity, and natural healing abilities. These regional developments created centers of evolution that would radiate influence to other parts of the world. The legacy of this primordial fusion can still be seen today in the dual nature of human beings, our capacity for both instinctive behavior and transcendent aspirations. We carry in our biology the marks of our primate origins, but we also possess spiritual yearnings that point to something far beyond mere physical survival. This creative tension between our animal and divine aspects remains the engine of our evolution, constantly pushing us toward higher expressions of our nature. The civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria occupy a central position in Edgar Cayce's revelations about the first spiritual humans. According to his psychic readings, these were not only technologically advanced civilizations, but also represented the first major experiments in the total integration of spiritual consciousness and physical form. Lemuria, located in the Pacific Ocean, was the birthplace of the first truly conscious human beings, where souls were able for the first time to maintain their spiritual memory while inhabiting physical bodies. It was a civilization based on harmony with nature and the development of natural psychic abilities. Atlantis later emerged as an evolution of the Lemurian experiment, developing in the Atlantic Ocean with a greater focus on technology and the manipulation of natural forces. The Atlanteans developed power crystals, flying machines, and energy systems that harnessed forces we barely understand today. However, their greatest achievement lay not in external technology, but in the ability to consciously direct their own biological and spiritual evolution. They knew how to modify their bodies for different environments and purposes, always maintaining a connection with their essential spiritual nature. The first spiritual humans of these civilizations possessed abilities that today we would consider supernatural. They could communicate telepathically, see the future through prophetic visions, heal through the laying on of hands, and consciously travel to other dimensions while maintaining their physical bodies in a state of deep meditation. These abilities were not the privilege of a select few, but natural characteristics of beings who had not yet completely lost their connection to the higher dimensions of existence. Social organization in both Lemuria and Atlantis was based on the recognition of each individual's spiritual nature. There were no hierarchies based on power or material wealth, but natural structures based on spiritual wisdom and the ability to serve the common good. Leaders were those who demonstrated greater spiritual development and the ability to channel guidance from higher dimensions. Education focused on the balanced development of all human faculties: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. The decline of these civilizations began when some groups began using their spiritual abilities for selfish and materialistic purposes. In Atlantis especially, knowledge of manipulating natural forces was gradually corrupted by the desire for power and control over others. Power crystals were used for warfare rather than healing, and genetic experiments began to create hybrid life forms that disregarded natural laws. This gradual corruption led to the catastrophes that destroyed both civilizations. The destruction of Atlantis and Lemuria marked the end of the first phase of human experience on Earth and forced the surviving souls to disperse throughout the world, taking fragments of their knowledge to emerging civilizations such as Egypt, India, and pre-Columbian America. Cayce asserted that many souls who lived in these lost civilizations are reincarnating today, bringing subconscious memories of spiritual capacities that can be reawakened. The growing interest in spirituality, psychic abilities, and alternative technologies may reflect these ancestral memories seeking to re-emerge. The transition of souls from elevated spiritual states to dense physical experience represents what Edgar Cayce described as a spiritual fall, not in the sense of divine punishment, but as a natural consequence of conscious choices that gradually limited the soul's original freedom. Initially, souls maintained full awareness of their divine nature even while inhabiting physical forms, able to enter and leave their bodies at will. However, as they became more deeply involved with the sensory and emotional experiences of material life, they began to forget their spiritual origins and increasingly identify with their temporary forms. The process of imprisonment did not occur all at once, but over thousands of generations, with each incarnation making it more difficult to remember the previous life and spiritual existence. Souls found the pleasures and challenges of physical experience intensely absorbing, creating a kind of spiritual amnesia that made them believe they were merely the bodies they inhabited. This growing identification with the physical form created what Cayce called the veil of forgetfulness, a psychological barrier separating waking consciousness from spiritual memory. The imprisonment in matter intensified when souls began to develop deep emotional attachments to their earthly experiences. The fear of death, the desire for material possessions, the need for social approval, and the pursuit of sensory pleasure created invisible chains that tied consciousness to the physical plane. Each life became a cycle of seeking satisfaction in temporary things, generating frustrations that led to new rebirths in an attempt to finally find complete happiness through material experiences. But have you ever stopped to reflect on how many times in your life you felt this inexplicable nostalgia for something you can't define? Human emotions, while offering rich and intense experiences, also became subtle traps for souls. Possessive love replaced unconditional love, anger replaced calm authority, and fear eclipsed the natural trust in the divine flow of existence. These emotional distortions created complex karmic patterns that perpetuated the cycle of rebirth, as each life generated new imbalances that needed to be resolved in future existences. Technology and material knowledge, though originally developed as tools to aid spiritual evolution, also contributed to imprisonment when they began to be seen as ends in themselves. Advanced civilizations like Atlantis became lost in the fascination with their own powers, forgetting that they were merely temporary instruments for the growth of the soul. External knowledge replaced internal wisdom, and the manipulation of natural forces replaced spiritual harmony with creation. However, Cayce emphasized that this fall was a necessary part of the soul's evolutionary plan. Only through the full experience of limitation and separateness could souls develop qualities such as compassion, humility, patience, and inner strength. Temporary imprisonment in matter would be like a rigorous school where the soul would develop spiritual muscles that could not be strengthened otherwise. Every material challenge would become a disguised opportunity for spiritual growth. Edgar Cayce's revelations about human origins created an apparent conflict with Darwin's theory of evolution, sparking debates that persist to this day between scientists and spiritualists. Materialist science bases its understanding of human origins on fossil evidence and genetic analyses that trace our lineage through gradual processes of natural selection over millions of years. Cayce, on the other hand, proposed that spiritual consciousness was the driving force behind evolution, using biological mechanisms as tools for its evolutionary needs. This fundamental difference in perspective regarding what came first, matter or consciousness, remains at the heart of the debate. Modern paleontology has mapped the evolution of primates to Homo sapiens in detail, but leaves large, unexplained gaps in what Cayce called evolutionary leaps. Certain changes in brain structure, language development, and the capacity for abstract thought occurred seemingly suddenly on the evolutionary scale, with no clear predecessors in the fossil record. Cayce's readings suggested that these leaps occurred when groups of more advanced souls chose to work more intensively with certain primate lineages, accelerating their development through direct spiritual influence. Modern genetics has yielded intriguing evidence that paradoxically, both supports and challenges Cayce's views. On the one hand, DNA analyses show that all humans descend from a relatively small number of common ancestors, which could indicate specific groups where souls first settled. On the other hand, the complexity of the genetic code and the precision of its mutations suggest a level of guiding intelligence beyond what random natural selection could explain. Some scientists are beginning to consider the possibility of directed evolution, driven by factors not yet understood. Contemporary neuroscience faces the hard problem of consciousness, the inability to explain how brain matter generates subjective experience. Cayce turned this question on its head, proposing that consciousness is primary and uses the brain as an interface to operate in the physical world. Recent research on phenomena such as near-death experiences, past life memories in children, and documented psychic abilities begins to suggest that consciousness may indeed exist independently of the brain, supporting aspects of Cayce's view. The field of epigenetics has discovered that lived experiences can modify genetic expression and be passed on to future generations, providing a possible scientific mechanism for how the spiritual experiences of souls could influence biological evolution. If souls truly carry memories of past experiences, this could explain how seemingly instinctive knowledge and capabilities emerge in different species without obvious prior learning. Quantum physics introduced concepts that echo Cayce's spiritual insights into the fundamental nature of reality. The discovery that the observer's consciousness affects the behavior of subatomic particles suggests a profound connection between mind and matter that classical science could not explain. While applying quantum principles to complex biological systems remains controversial, some scientists have ventured to propose that consciousness may operate through quantum processes in the brain, offering a possible bridge between the materialist and spiritualist views of human evolution. According to Edgar Cayce, each soul that chose to incarnate on Earth has a specific mission in humanity's grand evolutionary process. This mission is not an externally imposed task, but a purpose the soul itself defined before incarnating, based on its previous experiences and the qualities it desires to develop. Some souls came as pioneers, exploring new territories of human experience and paving the way for others to follow. Others chose missions of service, dedicating themselves to raising collective consciousness through art, science, philosophy, or healing. Each soul contributes its unique talent to the evolutionary symphony of the human species. The diversity of missions reflects the complexity of the evolutionary process, which requires multiple approaches to be completed. Some souls focus on developing intuition and psychic abilities, serving as bridges between the physical world and the spiritual dimensions. Others specialize in transforming spiritual knowledge into practical applications, creating technologies, social systems, or healing methods that benefit humanity. Still others whose mission is simply to radiate unconditional love and compassion, raising the vibrational frequency of the environment in which they live through their own transformed presence. Fulfilling a soul's mission rarely happens linearly or obviously. Often a soul's greatest contributions emerge through its apparent limitations or challenges. A person facing physical hardships can develop compassion and inner strength that inspire thousands of others. Someone experiencing great loss can discover a wisdom about letting go that benefits everyone around them. Cayce's readings suggested that there are no true victims on the evolutionary plane, only courageous souls exploring different aspects of the human experience for the benefit of all humanity. The evolutionary mission also includes resolving karmic patterns created in previous existences. Each soul carries subconscious memories of past actions that created imbalances, and part of its current mission involves balancing these energies through different conscious choices. This process of karmic resolution is not a punishment, but an opportunity for growth. The soul learns through direct experience the consequences of different types of actions, developing wisdom that becomes a permanent part of its evolution. As humanity approaches a new evolutionary phase, individual missions begin to converge toward greater collective goals. Cayce prophesied that we are entering an era where the barriers between dimensions will become more permeable, and souls who incarnated with missions to bridge worlds will begin to more fully activate their capabilities. This includes the reawakening of psychic abilities, the rediscovery of lost spiritual technologies, and the development of forms of social organization based on the recognition of each individual's spiritual nature. Understanding one's own evolutionary mission then becomes a powerful tool for self-knowledge and life direction. By recognizing that our current existence is part of a much larger project, each experience gains transcendent meaning, and each choice becomes an opportunity to consciously contribute to collective evolution. Life ceases to be a random sequence of events and reveals itself as a curriculum carefully planned by the soul itself for its maximum growth and contribution to the whole. Edgar Cayce's prophetic visions of humanity's future reveal a period of radical transformation in which our species will gradually recover the spiritual capacities lost during its long immersion in matter. According to his readings, we are entering the final phase of a great evolutionary cycle that began 12.5 million years ago, where souls will finally be able to fully integrate their spiritual and physical natures. This integration will not mean abandoning the material world, but rather transforming it through awakened consciousness, creating a reality where spirit and matter function in perfect harmony. The process of returning to divine origins has already begun through the growing spiritual awakening we are observing worldwide. More and more people are experiencing expansions of consciousness, developing psychic abilities, and seeking transcendent meaning in their lives. This collective awakening represents the first waves of a transformation that will eventually affect all of humanity. The most advanced souls, many of them veterans of civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria, are reincarnating specifically to lead this transition, bringing with them subconscious memories of how to integrate spiritual technology into everyday life. The approaching New Age will be characterized by the rediscovery of abilities we now consider supernatural, but which actually represent the normal functioning of fully developed human beings. Telepathy will gradually replace verbal communication as the primary method of exchanging information, enabling a deeper and more intimate understanding between people. Energy healing will become as commonplace as modern medicine, and past life insight will provide valuable context for resolving conflicts and understanding relationships. Social structures will undergo fundamental transformations based on the recognition of each individual's spiritual nature. Political and economic systems based on competition and scarcity will give way to cooperative models that recognize the natural abundance of the universe. Education will focus on the development of all human faculties, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, preparing new generations to function consciously as multidimensional beings. Work will become a form of creative expression and service to the common good, rather than a mere necessity for survival. Future technology will integrate spiritual principles into its very operation, creating devices that respond to conscious intention beyond mechanical control. The power crystals mentioned by Cayce in his descriptions of Atlantis may resurface in modern forms, offering sources of clean, unlimited energy. Communication with other dimensions and even with other intelligent life forms in the universe will become possible through the development of technologies that operate through spiritual resonance. The climax of this transformation will be what Cayce described as the return of the Christ, not as a specific religious event, but as the awakening of the Christ consciousness within every human being. This consciousness represents the complete remembrance of our divine nature and the ability to express unconditional love in all circumstances. When enough people awaken to this consciousness, all of humanity will be elevated to a new evolutionary level, where conflicts based on fear and separateness will become impossible. Humanity's ultimate destiny, according to Cayce, is not to escape Earth or transcend physical existence, but to transform this planet into a perfect reflection of the higher spiritual realms. Earth will become a garden, where souls from across the universe will come to experience the unique beauty of a reality where all dimensions of existence function in conscious harmony. This is the true meaning of heaven on earth, not a place of material indulgence, but a reality where every moment reflects the infinite perfection and love that is our true nature. Edgar Cayce's revelation is not just an ancient theory, but a call to recognize that our true origin lies not in matter, but in spirit. If we came from 12.5 million years ago as souls who took on primate forms, it means we are on a long journey back to the divine. Each life, each incarnation, each experience is part of this cosmic awakening that will return us to our original nature. And now, faced with this transformative truth, the question that can change your life remains: are you prepared to remember who you truly are? Subscribe to the channel for more revelations that will transform your understanding of human existence, and share this content with those who need to awaken to these ancient truths. Together, we can rediscover our true divine origin and accelerate the collective return to our lost spiritual capacities. The future of humanity depends on each soul awakening to its evolutionary mission,